Growing up with my brother Alex was like living in the shadow of someone who was constantly trying to push you further into the darkness. From the moment he hit high school and I was still in middle school, he made it his mission to remind me that I would never be as cool, as smart, or as successful as him. Alex was that guy everyone seemed to love. Captain of the football team, straight-A student, charming enough to talk his way out of trouble, and somehow always the center of attention at family gatherings. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, more interested in computers than sports, better at working behind the scenes than being in the spotlight. When it came time for college, Alex went to an Ivy League school on a partial scholarship. My parents beamed with pride, telling everyone they knew about their brilliant son. I chose a state school with a good tech program. It wasn't fancy, but it had exactly what I wanted. The day I announced my choice, Alex laughed and said, "Well, I guess someone has to go to the backup schools." My parents scolded him, but I could see they were disappointed too. They'd hoped I'd aim higher like my brother. They didn't understand that I was aiming for what I actually wanted, not what would impress other people. After college, the divide between us grew even wider. Alex got a job at a prestigious consulting firm, wearing expensive suits and traveling to major cities for client meetings. I took a job at a small tech startup that most people had never heard of. The pay wasn't great at first, but I believed in what we were doing and I loved the work. Family dinners became a showcase for Alex's success stories. He'd dominate the conversation with tales of important clients and big deals, dropping names of celebrities he'd met and expensive restaurants where he'd dined. When my parents would politely ask about my work, I'd barely get a sentence in before Alex would interrupt with some backhanded comment. "Still at that little computer shop, huh? Guess somebody's got to fix the printers." He didn't understand or care that I was actually developing software, not fixing printers. But it didn't matter to him. In his mind, if it wasn't prestigious, it wasn't valuable. The comments continued for years. Every holiday, every family gathering, every group text, Alex would find a way to slip in something about my pathetic career choice. "When are you going to get a real job? Must be nice to work at a place where you can wear t-shirts all day. Some of us have to look professional. Did Mom tell you I just got another raise? You should ask me for tips sometime." I mostly ignored him or laughed it off. Our parents would occasionally tell him to stop, but they'd often follow it up with comments like, "But maybe your brother could learn something from you, Alex." They never saw how much it hurt. What Alex and my family didn't understand was that my company was growing. That little startup was slowly becoming a major player in our industry. My role expanded, my equity in the company increased, and yes, my salary grew too. But I never felt the need to broadcast it. Success, to me, wasn't about impressing others. It was about doing work I found meaningful and building a comfortable life. Last month, our whole family gathered for my parents' anniversary. It was a big celebration at an upscale restaurant that Alex had chosen and partially paid for, a fact he mentioned at least 5 times during dinner. He was in rare form that night, louder and more obnoxious than usual. He'd just closed a big deal and couldn't stop talking about it. When the conversation finally, mercifully turned to other topics, my mom mentioned that I'd recently moved to a new apartment. "It's in a really nice area," she said. "We visited last weekend." Alex snorted. "Probably got a roommate to split the costs, right?" "No," I said simply. "I live alone." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Must be a shoebox or in a bad neighborhood." "It's actually a 2-bedroom with a great view of the park," my mom interjected, trying to be helpful. Alex laughed. "How are you affording that? Did you finally cave and ask for money from Mom and Dad?" I felt my patience, which had stretched thin over years of these comments, finally snap. "I afford it because I make good money, Alex." He rolled his eyes. "Sure you do. Look, there's no shame in admitting you need help. Not everyone can be successful." My dad tried to change the subject, but Alex wasn't done. "Seriously though, bro," he continued, "it's not too late to get a real career. I could put in a word at my firm. They might have something entry-level in IT or something." "I don't need an entry-level job," I said, my voice steady despite my rising anger. "I'm a senior developer and part of the leadership team." Alex smirked. "At that little startup? Come on, we both know those titles don't mean anything in the real world." "That little startup has over 200 employees now, and just secured major funding. Whatever helps you sleep at night, he shrugged. Some of us actually made something of ourselves instead of playing with computers all day like a loser. The table went quiet. Even Alex seemed to realize he'd gone too far. My mother looked mortified, my father uncomfortable. My sister-in-law stared at her plate. I stood up, excused myself politely, and went to the restroom. Standing there looking at my reflection, I made a decision. I was done letting Alex's perception of me go unchallenged. Done letting my family think I was somehow less successful just because I didn't brag about it. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and took a screenshot of my last paycheck deposit. Then I sent it to Alex with a simple message. This is what playing with computers pays me every 2 weeks. Still think I'm a loser? When I returned to the table, Alex was staring at his phone, his face pale. He didn't say another word about my career for the rest of the night. The next morning, I woke up to a text from my mother asking if I'd really sent Alex my paycheck information. Apparently, he'd shown it to her, claiming I was lying, or that it must have been yearly, not bi-weekly. She was shocked when I confirmed it was real. "Well, why didn't you tell us you were doing so well?" she asked. "Because it shouldn't matter," I replied. "I've always been happy with my work. The money's just a bonus." I thought that would be the end of it. Alex had finally been put in his place, and maybe now he'd stop with the constant put-downs. But a few hours later, my phone buzzed with another message. From Alex. "Hey, can you loan me some cash?" No apology, no acknowledgement of years of mockery, just a request for money, as if he hadn't spent the last decade treating me like I was beneath him. I didn't respond right away. I wanted to type out all the hurt and frustration I'd felt over the years, to ask him how it felt to now be the one asking for help. But I didn't. I simply wrote back, "Why do you need a loan?" His response came quickly. "Having some cash flow issues, nothing serious, just need to bridge a gap until my next commission check." I still wasn't convinced. "How much are we talking about?" $20,000. I can pay you back in a few months, tops. $20,000. Not exactly small change. And the cavalier way he asked for it, as if it was no big deal, after years of treating me like I was financially inferior, made something twist in my stomach. "I'll think about it," I replied. Within minutes, my phone was ringing. It was my mother. "Your brother told me you're refusing to help him," she said, skipping the greeting entirely. I didn't refuse. I said I'd think about it. "But why do you need to think? He's family, and you clearly have the means to help. He wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." I sighed. "Mom, Alex has been belittling my career and my life choices for years. He called me a loser just yesterday, and now he wants $20,000? Don't you see how that's a problem?" "He was just teasing," she said, using the same excuse she'd been using since we were kids. "That's how brothers are. You know he loves you." "No, Mom, that's not teasing. That's bullying. And I put up with it for too long." The conversation continued in circles, with my mother insisting that I should help my brother because that's what family does. My father called next, making the same arguments but with a sterner tone. Then my aunt got involved, saying I was being petty and vindictive. Apparently, Alex had told them he was in real financial trouble. Something about investments gone wrong and potential repercussions if he couldn't cover his losses. I didn't get the details, just the guilt trips about how I could help but was choosing not to. No one seemed to care that Alex had never apologized for his behavior. No one acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, I had the right to decide how to spend my own money after years of being treated like I was less than. The pressure continued for days. Texts, calls, even a family intervention disguised as a casual dinner. Everyone had an opinion about what I should do with my money. Everyone except me, it seemed. I finally called Alex directly, wanting to hear from him what was really going on. The conversation was tense from the start. "So, are you going to help me or not?" he asked before I could even say hello. "I'm still considering it," I replied. "But first, I'd like to understand why you need this money so urgently, and maybe hear an apology for how you've treated me all these years." He scoffed. "Are you serious? You're holding a grudge over some harmless teasing? I didn't realize you were so sensitive." "It wasn't harmless, Alex. You constantly put me down, made me feel worthless, And now you're asking for my help like you're entitled to it? Look, he said, his voice taking on that persuasive tone he used when trying to get his way. I'm in a tough spot. I made some investments that didn't pan out, and I need to cover my losses before my firm finds out. You have the money. I need the money. It's simple. It's not simple. It's $20,000, and you haven't given me a single reason why I should trust you with it. Because I'm your brother, he exploded. That should be enough. The conversation deteriorated from there. Alex alternated between guilt trips, vague threats about telling the family more lies about me, and half-hearted attempts at reconciliation. But never once did he apologize or acknowledge how he'd treated me. In the end, I made my decision. I didn't give him the loan. I couldn't bring myself to hand over money to someone who still couldn't see past his own entitlement to recognize the hurt he'd caused. The family fallout was immediate. My parents are barely speaking to me. Alex has told everyone that I'm selfish and cruel. Extended family members have taken sides, most of them against me. Sometimes I wonder if it would have been easier to just give him the money, to buy my way back into the family's good graces. But then I remember all those years of sitting silently while he tore me down, of doubting my own worth because of his constant mockery. I worked hard for what I have. I deserve respect, not just when someone needs something from me, but all the time. And if my family can't see that, then maybe the problem isn't with me after all. So here I am, successful by most measures, but still being treated like I've done something wrong. Am I the a-hole?